You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is time to commence yet another chock-full broadcast week here on the Options Insider Radio Network. And we do that the way we always like to do, with episode uno of your bi-weekly options extravaganza, known far and wide as the Option Block. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the aforementioned network. Hope all of you had a great weekend. Hope all of you are enjoying this interesting start to the trading week yet again. Of course, if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing it on every platform under the sun. That's pretty much where this stuff is available these days. If you can't find it, you're just not trying hard enough. It's out there. You can much tell your smart speaker to play it for you now. It's everywhere. And of course, if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing. Of course, if you want more content in your lives, like great pro Q&As, options oddities at the end of the week, giveaways, live streams throughout the week, and pretty much a whole bunch more, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Whatever you do, do not go to /secret club. That is not for you. Do not go there. In fact, forget I shouldn't have even said that. Forget I even said that here on the show today. Instead, allow me to distract you by commencing our kickoff game for the week. You know, for a while now, we've been kicking off our network in fine 80s style by going back to that greatest of all decades and that greatest sports of the 80s. Yes, professional wrestling. And we are going to once again commence our broadcast week by seeing if you too can join my co-hosts here. Put on your guessing pants, listeners. Can you guess this 80s wrestler via their entrance music? In fact, we're going to mix it up this week. First off, we're going a little bit of a deeper cut. We've been playing kind of some top-level game. Now we're going a little bit deeper. We're going to test your knowledge. This one, you're going to get it quickly or you're not. It's very apropos, I will say, to what's going on right now. That's all I will say. I won't give any further hints from that. I will also say, too, that this is a tag team, even though I do believe this music was also used for one of the individual members of said tag team. So I suppose we will accept either answer, even though we are looking for the name of the tag team. So can you name this 80s wrestling tag team? Nothing yet, huh? Nothing flowing through your old brain pans there. I'm going to go around the horn and see if we can get some guesses, because the music just pretty much goes on like that. It's not the most memorable of themes, which is why it makes it difficult, which is why it makes it a perfect guess that 80s wrestler entrance theme. Let's go around the horn. We are joined now by Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, I should say, as well as the rockingest, or not the rockingest of lobsters, the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. I think we have a buzz-in from Uncle Mike. Uncle Mike, are you buzzing in, sir? Do you think you know what this is?
I'll give it a shot.
Go for it, sir.
Earthquake.
Yes, well done. I was actually going for the natural disasters. That's the name of the tag team, which, given the fact that we are beset by hurricanes and everything else right now, it seemed like an appropriate tag team to do. But yes, well done. I will also accept Earthquake, because that is technically Earthquake's music there. They didn't really dive too deep into the creative bucket for that one. They took Earthquake's music and they slapped it on the natural disaster. So it was Earthquake and Typhoon, I believe, were the two members of that one. So that's when I figured you'd get it right away or you wouldn't. It was a deep cut. Two very thick gentlemen, listeners, as in keeping with 80s wrestling. Did you get that one? I'll have to see if our chat got it. I don't see any guesses in our chat, so I think our chat was a little intimidated by that one as well. As we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down what the heck is trading. Yes, the show is about more than just 80s wrestling, even though 80s wrestling, a key component of the Monday episode, at least. Coming into today's show, things were starting off a little bit more optimistic. The big question we had on Friday was, of course, would we see this sell-off really continue coming into Monday? It usually seems like the second leg of the sell-off, the Monday after the Friday sell-off, is where we've seen the greatest shocks to the system, where we've seen the markets really start to panic, where we've seen VIX really start to pop. So the question coming into today, at least that I had, I know a lot of our compatriots on the network had coming into today, was would we continue the sell-off? And early on in the session, listeners, it seemed like we were going to buck that trend. We were rallying in the S&P. We got up to north of 3,700. It's like about 3,715 is where we topped out. And then the bears had enough. They got their claws out and they said, no more for you, bulls. And they tore us all back down. And we were even coming into the start of the show, we were pretty close to it. We were still looking kind of mixed. And as the show has commenced now, we are fully in the red across the board. S&P off about 1%. Dow off a little over 1%. NASDAQ, the rare day where it is a laggard to the S&P and the Dow. I don't usually see that. Usually it's leading the charge. NASDAQ off about 0.4%. So our vol friends have kind of been all over the place. VIX, when we kicked off the show, a little bit north of 32. That puts it up about 4.2 points since last Thursday's show. So a little bit more juice here on the vol screen. You think this vol is going to keep up? Did you play along in our crystal ball on Friday? If you did, maybe you win some fabulous prizes. VVIX, the vol of vol, back at a level that was kind of the floor for most of the pandemic listeners, which is a little bit north of 100, 105.75 when we kicked off the show, up a whopping 14.75 from Thursday's show. So vol is getting more vol. Vol's getting more juicy. Vol's getting more frothy. Vol's getting more volatile out there, which is always intriguing. Interesting times. VXX, is this thing starting to, dare I say it, become relevant again? 2015 up 1.15 points. So at the very least, it is moving in the right direction. You could argue about the magnitude, but it at least is trying to approximate something along the lines of what it's doing. UVXY 1235 when we kicked off the show, up about 1.35 points. So no reverse split coming there today. SVIX, our inverse friend, not liking this market, down a full point, down to about a 1060 when we kicked off the show. UVIX 13.25, up almost 3 points, about 2.85 points. And VolQ at about a 34.5, up 1.5 points from where it was on Thursday. So a lot of red on the market screens, a lot of green on the vol screen. Uncle Mike, he did win our 80s wrestling guessing game, so he gets the pride of place of going first. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, as well as another point in our battle for Sergeant Slaughter. Uncle Mike, you will be happy to know, by the way, while you were gone, I did give you one bonus point, so you didn't fall as far behind as you might have feared, even though the meatball did get it last week. So I couldn't give you bonus points for every week. I gave you one bonus point. So you guys tied the first week, and then last week, the meatball did claim a point. So now you are clawing your way back, sir, but Uncle Mike, any enduring memories of the natural disasters, A, and then B, what's lighting up your tape in these, shall we say, interesting markets, sir?
Yeah, I can't say I have too many enduring memories of the natural disasters with earthquake. It was like a trend in like the later 80s to where we had tugboat, we had earthquake, we had the African Dream Hakeem, the white guy, which was kind of interesting. We had just a lot of like the giant, large men that really weren't necessarily super tall, but they were like kind of the next generation of the King Kong Bundys of the world. So can't say that I have a ton of enduring memories of the earthquake, but nonetheless, he was the man who got me a victory today, so I can't complain too much. In terms of these markets, I mean, holy cow, this is just the crazy downside. So we are still above our lows for the year at 36.36 in the SPX. We are approaching them. We might make a run at them today. We might make a run at them by the end of this trading block. Who knows? So we are getting close to it. We did not touch them or test them on Friday when we had the sell off. And when we got down to, I believe it was the 36, I'm just looking at my chart, the 36.47 level. So that was the low on Friday. And then we rallied off of that. So still have not tested the 36.36 level, but that's definitely a point of support, or at least whether it's strong or weak support, who knows, but it's the next level down of where it could be a stopping point. I think right now, the big thing that I'm looking at this stage is the treasuries. The 10-year note is getting pounded right now. And I think it's just on constant fear and uncertainty of where it can be at this stage. The 10-year note, it's something to where it continues to sell off. And if we keep raising interest rates, then that's not going to stop. So I do believe that it's more on fear of greater interest rate hikes. But at some stage, if they ever do say, okay, we're done raising interest rates, or we're going to pause raising interest rates, or we might not raise them up to the high heavens, we could see a little bit of a rally in that. But until then, there's really not a lot of reason to buy them at this stage. I do have a lot of exposure there, but it's very hedged, thank God. What I like about it right now is that if it's something that a government treasury, it's paying over 3%, the good news about owning a bond and it going down is that you do have the interest payments that will make you whole again if you hang on long enough. And that's the good thing about it. So with that, we did have a sell-off in oil last Friday with where it's at, and that's kind of continuing today. Oil's down $2 on the day, and Bitcoin still sucks.
Bitcoin still sucks, says Uncle Mike, a.k.a. the world's biggest fan of it. You had the Earthquake Wrestling Buddy as a kid. Don't lie to us, sir. You know, you huge on the Earthquake. And, of course, the other one, the Akeem, the African Dream Wrestling Buddy. Yes, a quality gimmick that I'm sure would work well in today's market. But now we go out to the land of the meatball. Mr. Meatball, if you have any enduring memories of the just massive slab of beef that was earthquake / the natural disasters, which, again, our chat made a good point. Someone guessed Iron Sheik because they thought of everything that was going on in Iran. That would have also been an apropos for the global climate right now one, but we did not do Iron Sheik. We went the natural disaster route, given the fact that hurricane tearing up Canada and about to just descend upon Florida. They're saying it's going to be the strongest hurricane in 100 years to hit that region. So batten down the hatches, all you folks down there in Florida. I know P&L Man in the chat. He lurks in Florida. Any other Floridians we got listen? Stay safe out there, listeners. We mean it literally this week. Let's go around the horn to the greases and meatballs. Any natural disaster memories, have at it. And then B, another interesting day in the market, sir, was lighting up your tape.
Well, I remember at one point, Earthquake had a feud with Hulk Hogan. And I think Hogan was getting some surgery. So they had him break Hulk Hogan's chest or something like that. And then he came back and they had a fight. This was, I want to say, the undercard main event for one of the WrestleManias. I also remember Earthquake coming back as one of the oddities, as a much smaller Earthquake and not being as big of a deal. In terms of Earthquake and Tugboat, I think I remember when Tugboat turned heel. I believe that was during a Survivor Series potentially, and that was interesting. And we all know what happened with Tugboat after the natural disasters. He became the Shockmaster, the greatest of all villains. The Shockmaster.
That's almost as bad as Repo Man. I'm not sure if it's quite that bad, but it's pretty bad.
Shockmaster was the worst. It was hands down the worst gimmick in history. And I think we all know how it started with Tugboat falling through the set and his bedazzled stormtrooper helmet falling off his head.
We might have to do an audience poll to settle that one because I'm still offended many years later by Repo Man because that was, of course, half of my beloved Demolition became Repo Man. But yes, that was not a good gimmick either. And we could also throw the Red Rooster in there, also pretty bad gimmick.
Red Rooster was a terrible gimmick, and he was a good wrestler. I think that he almost had a really good gimmick at one point too, right? Wasn't he? Oh, who was he in line to be? It was somebody awesome that
probably was going to be Ultimate Warrior. I said, nope, you get to be the Red Rooster.
I don't think it was Ultimate Warrior, but it was something. And then instead he used the Red Rooster. I don't know what he did to Vince McMahon, but it was not a great gimmick at all. When you're fighting the Brooklyn Brawler, you are not at the peak of your shall we say of popularity.
Not the wrestling apex.
Indeed, no.
All right, we got some vols, sir. Let's line up your tape out there in these markets today, sir.
Yeah, as Mike said, Treasury's getting smoked. You look at TLT, it's down almost 2%. IEF, which is the shorter term ETF, is down 1.6. Investment grade debt taking it on the chin as well. LQD down 1.5%. Interestingly, HYG is performing better than the other bond ETFs, which is interesting. Market as a whole, pretty much a sea of red. The transports are leading us lower. Apple was up as much as $3 early in the day. It's flat. Vol is outperforming the move we're getting today, which has me thinking that we may get another leg down. I don't know, but things, my VIX light is now full on green. We are in backwardation. The vol with us in backwardation, that's going to put a lift to the vol ETPs. That's pushing UVIX and UVXY and VXX, which Barclays announced they are resuming creation units, all up significantly higher. And that is what I'm seeing today. If you're looking for anything green, it is Macau casinos. They seem to be about the only thing that is finding a bid today. MLCO, Las Vegas Sands, they are crushing it today.
So we have to start paying official attention back to VXX again. Is that what you're telling me, sir?
Yeah, we got to add VXX back into the fold. Sorry, Mark. I thought it was written off, but it is back to normal. Just
when I thought I was out. They pulled me back in. Speaking of back in, listeners, we're going to do a fun flash poll right now. Just getting the finishing touches ready for it. We're going to do an option block flash poll just pretty much for the length of the show. What is the worst wrestling gimmick of all time? Gave you 3 choices and the infamous other. We gave you Repo Man, the Shockmaster, the Red Rooster, and other. Hit us up with your others. I'm sure you'll have some great others. That's only going to go for pretty much the length of the show, a little bit beyond. So if you're listening after the fact on the podcast, alas, you'll not have time to play. Of course, if you're following along at options, which you should be doing already, you'll see it go by. You'll also see our question of the week, which just went live earlier, right before the show, actually, which is kind of a time to revisit. We've been tracking all of our questions of the week throughout the year, and sometimes it's interesting to revisit some of these. Back in June, we asked you guys, when we were first seeing this initial sell-off in the market, what level are you guys thinking about where you maybe want to start BTFDing, buying that dip, nibbling back in? And over 40% of you said below 37.5. And we are obviously below that now. In fact, as we posted this question this morning, S&P was right at about 36.60. And so we said, hey, we're going to revisit that. Are you guys still looking to buy back in here? Or are you waiting for lower levels? Or we gave you a third choice. I never got out. And so far, early voting, almost 91% saying you're waiting for lower levels, 9% saying you're back in, and nobody so far has said you never got out. So that's a good one to see. But we shall see. This will be our question of the week throughout the week. Get over there at Options. Make your voice heard. Also vote in our question of the week. I forgot to have them tag the meatball on this. So tell you what, we will retweet it right now as we're talking. And I don't know, that's the wrong button. There we go. See, listen, I'm trying to host a show and tweet at the same time. That's why I have the producers do all this fun stuff. All right, there we go. Now I retweeted it with the meatball so he can retweet it, and we'll get some fun in there. Speaking of fun, let's see what kind of fun the markets are having out there. Oh, we've got a pretty red day on the screens. That means usually VIX is doing some numbers, and that's pretty much what we're seeing. VIX, 464,000 contract. This is the busiest we've seen VIX at this time of the day in quite some time. The ADV, 440. So we are already north of that already inflated ADV. Remember, just a week ago, it was below 400,000 listeners. It is up over 40,000 contracts just since our last show. So that ADV has taken a turn to the upside. Not a huge surprise there, given the paper we're seeing out there these days. The SPY, almost at 6 million contracts already, listeners. 5 3/4 million contracts on the tape. The ADV, about 8 1/3 million, seems certainly on pace to hit that today. The S, we had a listener chime in asking, the S was closing in on 3 1/4 million contracts on Friday, and they were asking if that was the busiest or second busiest day of all time. I'll have to get the official numbers out there, but it was closing at the time they asked us. It was about 3.1 million, so it was certainly closing in on 3 1/4, which is a heck of a lot of paper for the S. The S right now, 1.7 million, so that's also a heck of a lot of paper. So it's on pace to maybe revisit those levels again today. The ADV is also looking pretty frothy, 2.63 million contracts. That's a heck of a lot of paper for the S. Then we got IWM, 883,000 contracts. That's already north of its ADV, which is 860. I neglected to throw good old small caps into our rundown here. Let's pull them up really quickly, at least the IWM flavor. Off 1.6%, 1637 right now. So again, well south of that 2,000 level we were at not that long ago there, listeners. You want to deep dive into small caps, stay tuned for TWIFO a little bit later on in the week, listeners. And the Qs, 1.96 million contracts already. The ADV is 2.8. I got a feeling they're going to hit that today. So closing in on 2 million contracts already. It'll be interesting to see now what's going on with the single names, because these days when it's all macro, sometimes the single names get left by the side of the road. And that appears to be the case again today. It only cost you 169,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today. That's almost half of what we saw not too long ago out there in the market, listeners. So it's one of those days everyone's obsessed with all things S&P and VIX and small caps and NASDAQ. Maybe not as much with the components therein. Number 10 gets you to Ford, listeners. 169,000 contracts. Ford back below the 12 handle. Those 12 puts I sold ages ago. Back in play, even though they've long since expired into stock. So let's see. Ford, 169, 1194 right now, off about 40 cents today. Bank of America, number 9, 170,000 contracts on the tape. Number 8, Softy. This is kind of like its new spot. Softy seems to be hanging out at the 8 to 9 spot a lot these days. Today, number 8, 186,000 contracts. Softy only off half a buck, so they're managing to buck that trend. This had a nice range today. Got as high as 241.5 and as low of 236.95. So this thing has done a lot of living over the course of the morning, listeners, and it seems like it has more to come. Number 7, our old friend, the artist formerly known as Google, now Alphabet. 98 bucks for Alphabet, off about $0.75 and 197,000 contracts on the table. Let's just see, what is the low for Alphabet on the year? The low for Alphabet on the year came today, 97.47. Alphabet plumbing new depths, at least here for the year. Number 6, another FKA, formerly known as, this time it's Meta. Meta for 266,000 contracts, and number 6, 137 here off 340. We're just talking about someone getting run over on the 200 calls in November, listeners, and rolling those down. They have a long way to go. That was on Oddities last week. They have a long way to go to make those up. So if you're feeling bad about yourself, just think, hey, you didn't spend, I think they spent somewhere around close to $10 for the Nove 200. So think about that if you're bemoaning some of your trades out there right now. The range on Meta today, 136 and about 3/4 on the dark side, 142.25 on the upside. So quite a range out here for Meta today. Number 5, NVIDIA. They come in for this one today as well. Yes, they are off 2.215 or so, off about 1.75%. Trading about exactly 123 right now. NVIDIA, 294,000 contracts. Looks like they also hit their pretty much 52-week low today as well. So plumbing some new depths out here for some of these names. After these chip names, AMD, NVIDIA, these names seem like they could do nothing but go up. These days, not so much. Number 4, pretty much its usual place, AMD. We're all the way up to number 4, listeners, only at 344,000 contracts. That shows you just how macro focused everything is today. AMD, 66.77, off about $1.20, and they also hit their 52-week low today of 66.5. So new lows across the board here, listeners. AMD, 344,000 contracts for number 4. Number 3, looks like the top 3 are pretty much the same folks, the usual suspects here. Amazon actually bucking the trend today. Amazon, 477,000 contracts, and they're actually up on the day right now. 115 and about a half, up about 1 3/4 or 1.5%. They got as high as 117.34, so they are not at their 52-week low. The 52-week low is 101.25. They are a fair ways from that out there. So Amazon getting a little bit of a lift in these stormy shores. So are you heading out to Amazon these days, listeners? Hit us up, let us know. As we get out to the fruit company, this name has kind of resisted most efforts to tank it, and that seems to be the case again today as well. 150.75, up about 1/3 of a point. How low did it get? 149.64. Obviously, we're a long way from the 52-week low. We're a little bit shy of 130, about 129. So we got a long ways to go to even threaten that. They got as high today as 153.75, so they're about exactly $3 below that high for the intraday high, at least. And good for 960,000 contracts on the tape today, listeners. That means, number 1, you don't need me to tell you anymore, listeners. It's Tesla, 1.21 million contracts on the tape. Tesla also up today, 276.80. All these names obviously contributing to the fact that NASDAQ underperforming to the downside today. $1.50 to the upside, 276.94 right now, up about, it's about $1.60 and about 0.6%. Let's see, as high today was 284.09, so they are about $7 below that right now. Low was 270. And they're pretty far above their 52-week low as well of 206 out there. So intriguing stuff afoot out there, listeners. Again, another one of these days when the macro beckons, the micro tends to fall by the wayside out here. Let's go out here to what's lighting it up from an earnings perspective this week. Did hear a rumor that the Oracle of New Hampshire is going to be in town this week for the trading show. So maybe I'll have a chance to meet up with them. Maybe we'll do some fun content. We shall see. If you're into fine country dining, then Cracker Barrel on Tuesday may have you interested, as well as Blackberry. They're still floating around out there as a brand. Thursday, Bed Bath & Beyond. May have heard about them in the last few months. Rite Aid, CarMax, Micron, and Nike. And Friday, Carnival Corp. We got hot off the presses reports for all you folks out there. Let's see if you have any earnings. No earnings move results for this morning, but we do have some upcoming announcements. Let's go out to Micron. They're on the 29th this week. I haven't talked about them in ages. 50.10 is where they were going into this report. They're pricing in $3.32. In the past, they moved $2.64. So intriguing stuff out there. Let's see who else we've got in this report popping off here. Jabil out of Tampa. So they better batten down the hatches. Tampa seems like it's ground zero for this hurricane that's coming in here this week. They're popping off tomorrow before the bell. Ticker symbol JBL, listeners. 56.25. And looks like they're a worldwide manufacturing services company. And they're pricing in $337. In the past, they've moved $308. So if you're hanging out there, not the JBL of speakers and everything else, listeners out there. If you're into this name, they're popping off tomorrow before the bell. We got more names popping off. You can find all the tickers for yourselves completely for free. TheOptionsInsider.com is the place to go. Let's look here really quickly. No new earnings trades this week. Still monitoring, I should say, 97 long straddles and 68 long calendars for your earnings trading information and education. You can find all that, TheOptionsInsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab to begin your voyage to the dark side. As we begin our voyage into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by TheOptionsInsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
See a lot of our chat talking about different money line wagers on the weekend for football. All I got to say is, if you want to take the Bears, take the early win and get the heck out of Dodge. That's exactly what I did. I never would have touched them on the money line if it wasn't for the early payouts. Luckily, DraftKings offers that sometimes. When they offer that, take advantage. All they had to do was be up by 3 at some point during the contest, and I won. Luckily, I won within the first few minutes of the game, and that was done. So all the subsequent skullduggery that happened and falling apart and everything else before they eked their way to a victory, you don't have to worry about any of it. It was fun. It's a much more relaxing way to watch the game. So I highly recommend early payouts if you have that option. Let's see what kind of early payouts we have for you folks out there today, listeners, in terms of oddities and weirdness. Well, let's start off. This is the name we've talked about before. I think it's been on Options Oddities, so we'll throw a little pro content your way this week, listeners. This time it's coming up on the Odd Block today. This is AGNC Investment Corp. Ticker symbol AGNC. They own a mortgage management, so they're effectively a REIT. 965 is where they're trading right now, off about $0.75 or almost 7.5%. So a rough day for them. On the year, a year ago, they were 16.25. That was also pretty much close to their high for the year. Their high for the year was actually 1674. Came a few days later, and then the rest of the year they were pretty much selling off. They hit what had been their previous low for the year back on June 16th of 1003, but they have since recovered all the way up to 1280 and then gave it up again today, back down to their new 52-week low of $9.60. So they just hit this morning, a nickel away from where we are trading right now. And it seems like someone, Mr. Meatball, is undeterred by the sell-off. And they say, you know what? This is overdone. I need to get myself a little bit of this agency because they came in this morning and scooped up 20,002. Gotta love that extra two lot for luck. 20,002 of the D's 11 calls. They paid 16 cents, lifting the offer. The market was 13.16. The stock was higher, 991. So that's your first sign that these aren't exactly moving in their favor. There are going to be obviously earnings between now and December. The next announcement is on October 24th. So they get themselves an earnings or two baked in here as well. Like I said, they were just trading about a month ago, a little over a month ago, August 16th. They were trading almost $13, so $12.80. So this is not perhaps as far of a bridge as it seems, but it is still a decent way for this name to retrace, Mr. Meatball. What are your thoughts on these crazy upside calls in agency, sir?
You got to wonder whether it's some sort of short hedge or something like that, because most of the volume we've seen in AGNC has been almost exclusively puts. Traders have been buying up a lot of downside in this name, notably out in January and in March. So could be some short covering, but those are cheap. I will say that. But maybe some short covering. We saw some huge put buyers rolling down last week, and I think that and actually levering up. So I continue to think this thing's going lower, but we could have a little bit of maybe someone's looking for some relaxing interest rates or something like that, but might just be a short cover.
That's one of the reasons why we wanted to highlight this one. Obviously, it's sizable. And also, you're right, it is kind of bucking the trend of all the recent paper we've seen out there. The last time we talked about agency was actually on Options Oddities back on August 19th, listeners. So if you're not on the pro side, you haven't heard that one. We talked about someone coming in and scooping pretty sizable chunk of puts, 25,000 of the October. So pretty near dated, too. They bought the 12 puts. At the time, the stock was $12.50. They paid through the offer. The market was $31.38. They paid nearly 40 cents, $39.80. So obviously they got some splits there, listeners, for the October 12 puts. Obviously, in hindsight, that trade worked out. The stock trading right around 960 right now, listeners. So that one worked out. And again, they were the same earnings, October 24th, that we're talking about for these D's calls here. So we have seen a lot of short paper, and it has worked out. The stock has taken a bath, about almost exactly $3 since we last talked about it, to the dark side. So it could be someone, maybe you're right, maybe short covering, right? But it is interesting to see some paper finally starting to buck that short trend out there in agency. You folks been looking at agency? You've been toying with the puts, or perhaps you like these these are kind of swing for the fences calls, but they're not that expensive either. So at the very least, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. You like these better? Hit us up. Let us know what you think. Let's get on out to another name. I do believe this is a newcomer to the odd block, or if you haven't, we have talked about this before, but it's been quite some time. This is GERN, ticker symbol GERN or GERN. It's obviously a biotech. Oh, they go for therapeutic products for cancers that inhibit telomerase. Telomerase, of course, the telomeres, listeners, the cell death indicators in your cell. Let's go out here. So they're cheapy biotech. Gotta love these. This is kind of what the odd block was created around. Trading 2.25 right now, off about 4 cents. On the year, let's see, a year ago, they were trading $1.45, so a wee bit south of where they are right now. And they rallied up to $1.72 on November 8th, and they sold off again. They got down to 99 cents on March 14th. Things are not looking good. Obviously, since then, they've had a nice little run. They shot up to their high for the year on September 13th of $3.06, so just a couple of weeks ago. And since then, they have come off that to the tune of about 80 cents to the dark side. They're trading $2.26 right now. Let's see, on the day, they got as low as $2.19 and as high as $2.36. So cheapy biotech. Usually we see people loading up on calls on these things. Today, this is not what I expected. We've got someone coming in and looks like pretty much lifting the offer on the Jan 2 puts. 4,334 of these bad boys, to be precise. Paying 54 cents for these. They were offered at 55 cents at the time. This is a 135 vol, if you are wondering, listeners. The stock was pretty much here, 223, when these puts went up. There are some earnings. The next are on November 8th. This is not the paper I expected. Usually biotech, you see people swinging for the fences to the upside. You don't see a lot of people scrambling to hedge to the downside. Certainly not when they're $2 stocks. $50, $20 biotech, okay. $2, you don't usually see that. So that's what makes this doubly intriguing. Mr. Meatball, sir, what are your thoughts on someone scrambling to protect themselves at the $2 strike in GERN? I'm paying 54 cents for the privilege, sir.
You know, I gotta ask my niece about this. She's getting her PhD in biochemistry, and she's actually doing studies on telomeres. So I'm gonna ask her about this company. It's a her studies flop. The stock's going to zero, right? So I get it. Protecting a position. I'm guessing this is probably someone that's long stock. That would be, I think that's almost a certainty, just based on where this thing has gone and where they are trading it. So my guess is that this is a long stockholder buying some puts.
They are certainly paying up for their protection through January. That's a hefty price to pay, listeners. But again, if the choice is that or zero, I suppose that could make some sense. But intriguing stuff. Again, you don't see that too often in the cheapy biotechs, which is why it came to our attention. Let's get out of here. This just sounds like a fun name. This is Axle. Ticker symbol AXL, listeners. American Axle and Manufacturing Holding. That just sounds American. Out of Detroit, they make axles. What's more American? It's more American than making axles out of Detroit. They make the drive trains for all the cars you love and drive, listeners out. That just screams America. Red, white, and blue there. $7.18. I don't know what's going on with my chart. Looks like it's just kind of literally unched right now, which is interesting. On the year, let's see, a year ago, it was trading $9.14, so about exactly $2 north of where it is right now. Shot up to about $10.60 on October 15th. Kind of bounced around in that range till January. Then they sold off again to about $7.85 in late January. Then they sold off some more in April to their low for the year of $6.36. Then they rebounded pretty aggressively. They got all the way up to on August 16th, so about 6 weeks ago, they got up to $11.96. So they had a nice pop there. And then they have since come right back down to where they are right now, $7.16 right now. So they pretty much gave up all that upside and then some, and they're back down about 21% still on the year, about $1.90. So, wow, a lot of living to be done in American Axle and Manufacturing this year. Good old Detroit Steel. driving some vol out here. Let's see what our eye of Sauron picked up out here in Axel. That's a great ticker, Axel. 3,700 of the October 7 puts. Looks like someone decided, you know what? You have come for American Axle. You have beaten it up enough this far and no farther, and I will draw the line in the sand right here at the 7 strike, this far and no further. And I will sell those for 35 cents. And if you come for it, I will buy my stock for $6.65. They did it 3,700 times. That is a 66 vol if you are intrigued, listeners. The stock was a little bit higher. It was 730. So these are probably a little bit in their face right now, but not too bad. The earnings are on November 4th. So that does include, actually, it does not include some earnings. I take that back. Just through October expiration. So this is just a straight up good old line in the sand. If they get the stock, they get it not that far away from the 52-week high. And again, this thing was just trading almost $12 just a few weeks ago. So heck of a volatile axle manufacturer, Mr. Meatball. What say you? I know you love going up to Detroit. Are you a big fan of American Axle and Manufacturing Inc., sir?
How could you not be? I'm a huge fan of it. Yeah, these do look like line in the sand. Someone willing to take delivery. Pretty nice yield. I don't hate the sale down here. I mean, this stock has really come off. It's getting near its June lows. The trader would be buying below those lows. So I don't hate this at all. I think it's a good sale.
Yeah, I don't hate this one either. So someone getting a nice little line in the sand off here in Axle. You like these, listeners? You want to piggyback? Trade Axle? Hit us up. Let us know, as it is time for Uncle Mike to take the reins. It is time for the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, quick update on our flash poll before Uncle Mike begins his strategy block. Right now, the voting in our worst gimmick of all time. 50% say the Red Rooster and a tie for number 2, 25% each for Shockmaster and the Repo Man. Get in there at options. Make your voice heard right now while you still have time. Mr. Uncle Mike, are you surprised at those results? What is your vote for the worst gimmick of all time? And B, if you have time, sir, what is your strategy block for today?
You know what? I think I'd go with the Red Rooster the more I think about it. I mean, Repo Man was painful. But yeah, Red Rooster would probably be my vote as the worst gimmick ever. I think that one was really awful, quite honestly. In terms of the strategy block today I want to go with something that's boring, but something that's very important, and that is synthetics. And so a lot of times when people are looking for strategies of what to do, they'll look at something and then they'll overcomplicate it. And then, I could have gotten the same risk reward by just doing this. And I think that's something that's important in a market like this, because a lot of people are looking to hedge themselves or perhaps prepare for a comeback in the market or whatever the case may be. And oftentimes when people look at stuff, it becomes people outsmart themselves. And that's kind of what we want to prevent right now. So what is a synthetic? Well, let's start off with the most simple synthetic of them all, covered call versus cash secured put. Let's say that XYZ stock is trading at $50 per share. You could buy the stock and sell the covered call for $1, let's say, and let's also assume no dividend on the stock. Or you could just simply sell the 50 put for also $1, let's say. Now, by doing that, you've created an identical risk reward. Either one, it's identical. Because of the fact, if the stock goes higher, you will have gotten paid $1 to sell the stock at $50. And let's say that on the short put side of it, stock goes higher, that put expires worthless, and your profit would be $1. Now, of course, there's certain differentials that exist because in reality, the put would likely be a nickel cheaper, possibly a dime cheaper, just because of the fact that there's not as much cash outlay required for the put, and you could earn some interest on the additional cash. On a macro level, it's the same thing. So have that understanding. Now, the same could apply towards other trades as well. If you're selling a vertical put spread, if you buy a vertical call spread at the same strike prices, once again, it's the exact same risk reward. That's why in a lot of ways, one of the things that the boys over at the option pit say, you'll never hear them say the words credit spread, because people get a false sense of security in that they're getting an actual credit, when all you're getting when you're selling a short spread, you're getting an income, but it's not an automatic credit. You're not getting paid, so to speak. You still have to take on the risk. So with that, have an understanding of how synthetics exist. They can also exist in the calendar spread world. If you are if you're buying an at the money call spread, and let's say you're selling the front month and then you're buying 2 months out further, exact same risk reward if you're doing the same thing with puts. Now, of course, there can be certain minor differences that exist with it, but all in all, it's the same thing. So what I want to emphasize today for the strategy block is that when you're looking for more complex strategies, really take a look and make sure that you're not outsmarting yourself and you're doing this 12-legged spread that's doing this, 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 and this. Well, you might have been able to accomplish the same thing with just 1 or 2 or 3 legs. So be careful with that. And that's what having a good understanding of synthetics is all about. I will be having a video on synthetics that I'll be tweeting out sometime in the next couple days, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned indeed. As we keep on rolling, listeners, it is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show we tell you what we're keeping an eye on for the rest of the week until our second episode drops on Thursday. Give you a quick update on our polls. It looks like there's been some evolution in both our wrestling poll, and I'll give you our question of the week update here as well. It's now a dead heat. It is a 3-way tie for the worst gimmick of all time. Repo Man, Shockmaster, and Red Rooster all tied at 33%. It's a dead heat. Get in there. Break the tie, listeners. Hint, the answer is Repo Man. Even though Red Rooster, pretty good as well. I'm not as familiar with Shockmasters, but we'll let you guys be the ultimate arbiters of that one. Speaking of ultimate arbiters, our official question of the week this week. Again, back in June, over 40% of you folks said that you were waiting until the S dropped below 37.50. That was a very crucial level before you said you were willing to start maybe nibbling at the market again. Here we are, back almost 100 points below that level, listeners. Are you buying back in now, or are you waiting for lower levels still? Let's go around the horn. First off, Mr. Meatball, are you shocked that we don't have a definitive answer yet in our worst gimmick of all time? A dead heat, a actual tie right now, Mr. Meatball. So are you shocked and awed at that? And then B, what do you think our audience is voting for here? Are they back in on this market? Are they waiting for lower levels, or did they never get out?
I think that they are waiting for lower levels, because when we get to a level people will buy, they stop and say, well, I think it'll go lower. So that'd be my bet. And then, I'm not shocked, if you will, that the Shockmaster, a little more under the radar, but definitely the most embarrassing introduction in history.
I have to definitely watch that clip now. I'm going to have to go search out that clip for myself to see the origins of the Shockmaster. And Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. Are you surprised at our dead heat and the worst gimmick of all time? And then B, what is your vote for what our audience, are they waiting for lower levels? Are they back in like Uncle Mike, or did they never get out?
I will say they're waiting for lower levels in terms of the Shockmaster. The fact that I've never heard of the Shockmaster tells me it must have been bad, so not surprising. And then in terms of what I'm looking at for the coming week, right now I'm waiting with bated breath to see if we can get below the 36 level in the S&P 500 today, to see where we're at with that, and seeing if at some point buyers come in with bonds.
You know, it's a pretty obscure gimmick if both Uncle Mike and I are not very familiar with it. So are you familiar with Shockmaster? He's got a third of our votes here on the poll, unless that's all Meatball just spamming his votes in there. I don't know. But it's still a tie there, and I'll let you know on the Thursday show, listeners, how this one turns out, or you can follow us at Options. You can see for yourself how this dead heat resolves itself. In terms of right now, the early voting for our actual question of the week, 93.3% of you right now are said you're waiting for lower levels, so you're not buying back in at that 37.5 and below level. 6.7% of you said you're back in right now, and no votes yet for I Never Got Out, which is intriguing. Let's go back around the horn. Let's go out to the greasiest of meatball. Mr. Meatball, sir, what are you keeping an eye on in these markets until we gather here together on Thursday, sir?
Just watching the Treasury, watching everything else. And then, that's really going to be the key. I want to see if Apple falls apart as well.
So far, Apple has proven to be quite resilient. Doesn't seem like it was that long ago, Mr. Meatball. We were talking about, can Apple hit 100? I can hit the par strike.
I think it can.
When it was breaking the 130 level, we're like, okay, here we go. We'll see if we can test 100. And it just turned right around instantly. So they love themselves some Apple. By the way, I saw an interesting infographic the other day. These days now out there in Apple, the Apple Watch accounting for more revenue than the iPad. Apple Watch, a bigger market for them than the iPad now, which I thought was kind of surprising. Maybe you guys have been following Apple for a while. That's old news to you, but that kind of surprised me when you see it in stark infographic form there. Uncle Mike, does that make you change your opinion on Apple? Are you all in now that the watch is tearing it up? And what else are you keeping an eye on until our next show on Thursday, sir?
Just keeping an eye on the treasuries like Mark, seeing if the 36 level with the S&P and with Apple. I never really got out of it. We still have it as a longer term holding in a lot of our portfolios, but to the level that I once had it in the early days of the show, it would take a lot to get me to go back to those levels.
All right, everybody, that music means we've come to the end of our sojourn here on the Option Block. You want a little bit more in your lives? Stay tuned. We'll be back in a little bit to break down all of the stuff that Uncle Mike sucks, or I should say thinks sucks, a.k.a. Bitcoin, ETH. Bitcoin rallying a little bit right now, so bouncing a little bit. ETH bouncing a little bit, still down net on the week. And all of our other friends, we'll get to all that goodness, Solana, Cardano, all that fun, and a whole bunch more. Solana refusing to break the 30 handle. Intriguing stuff. We'll get to there in the crypto rundown in a little bit. If you're listening to this on demand, of course, just hit next on your device of choice. Crypto rundown should be hanging out there waiting for you. Let's go back around the horn. Let's start with the Uncle-list of Mike. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir. If folks are intrigued, they want to reach out to you, see what's cooking in the land of all things TOSAW. Where should they go? What should they do?
Well, follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW. I put out as much content as I can. And if you are looking for a financial advisor and want to learn a little bit more about me, go to stcharleswealth.com. And if you like what you see, set up a time to talk to me.
Uncle Mike says he hates Bitcoin, but I know he's all in on Tron and Avalanche. Huge on those two there. So check him out over there, stcharleswealth.com. See what other crypto he's lining his pockets with these days. Another guy who loves himself a little bit, he's more in on Cosmos, though, is the Meatball. Mr. Meatball, sir, if folks want to reach out to you to debate all things crypto and vol and everything else, where should they go? What should they do?
Go to optionpit.com, and you can read what we're writing about macro and volatility and treasuries, the whole 9 yards. We got free content there every day, worth your time.
Optionpit.com. It's worth your time. And our network is worth your time. We got more coming at you in a little bit, listeners. So enjoy that. If you're listening live, of course, you'll get right at it instantaneously in your ear holes. TheOptionInsider.com/pro is the place to go. I think we're adjusting one of our guest schedules for the Pro Q&A for tomorrow. So we may have a new time and or guests for that tomorrow, depending on how the guest schedules are working out. Sometimes it's like herding cats, listeners. Get everybody to the table on time to answer all your questions. So we'll see what time and everything we have cooking for tomorrow for the Pro Q&A. Going to have a crazy palooza, I believe, on Wednesday, Education Wednesday. Going to have a double live Brian and a double live boot camp coming up as well. So I will be a busy beaver on Wednesday. I may even try, we'll see. I may even try to swing down to the trading show that's going on here in Chicago down there at Navy Pier. Some folks are coming in town for that. Check out that. Haven't been down there in a few years as well. And then, of course, back again on Thursday, another episode of The Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.